The 2025 AGA Hall of Fame inductees are Leon and Jan Dunn.
We're Leon and Jan Dunn. We live at St. John, Kansas. We have two children, Brian and Jennifer. Both have been active cattle producers and members of our family in the AGA. We feel really honored to be selected for the Hall of Fame, knowing full well that there's been some very influential people that have been inducted before us, and we had the pleasure of knowing many of them personally, and this is quite an honor. I grew up on a small family farm in this area, and I was the first of my family to have the opportunity to go on to college. I chose to go to Kansas State. Jan grew up at Olathe, Kansas. She is the second generation of her family to be able to go to college. We met at Kansas State. Her sorority sister and my fraternity brother was brother and sister, and they introduced us, and life went well ever since. My father had a very small farm and very small cattle operation. When I came back from college, I was exposed to another continental breed that we could multiply. I dearly loved the looks of those cattle, their profile. The only thing I didn't like is when we got them in to work them, I didn't like their tail ends jumping over the fence. So I had a fraternity brother, and he was also a member of the same livestock judging team that we were on at Kansas State. And he had a real active 4-H program, and he would try to source some steers for those 4-H'ers. He bought some steers out of Wyoming and thought they were Red Angus, and when he found out later they were Gelbvieh, and they were docile, they grew fast, they had good carcasses, and he knew I was kind of unhappy with the continental breed I was working on. He said, "You probably should take a look at Gelbvieh." Daryl found a heifer for Brian for a 4-H project, and so we started with Brian's heifer, and we really liked the performance and the docile of that heifer. So I proceeded to want to buy some Gelbvieh cows. That was in 1982. We became members of AGA in 1983, and so we started breeding cattle, doing a lot of AI work, and hoping that we could multiply some really good females to get a base started for our Gelbvieh herd. When we started, we wanted to join the state organization, but then it was called Heart of America, and it was Kansas and Missouri together. Well, we soon figured out logistic-wise, from eastern Missouri to western Kansas was far too wide, and to get participation in both states was very difficult. So we broke off and started the Kansas Gelbvieh Association, of which I was one of them involved in getting it started. I was a charter member, and I had served as president of the Kansas organization. Jan served 10 years as the secretary. We put on some state sales. They had a Kansas Beef Expo, which I was chairman of the Gelbvieh sales side of that for several years, and screened cattle. I have learned a lot from raising pigs, and we have incorporated some of the technology that we have found that was important in the swine operation. So collecting data has really been important to us. We think it's, number one, really important to have proper structure. We think health is very important. We found in our swine herd that if we have top genetics and good health, the productivity of those animals is really great. So we're trying to incorporate that into our cattle operation, and so far we have been somewhat successful. We've got a pretty good background to build on our cattle herd, and Brian is working really hard to elevate that to the next level, and hopefully we can get that done in the next 3 or 4 years. 4-H and FFA has been a very important part of our family lives, so we thought it would be good to form a Kansas Junior Association. So in 1986, Steph, Diane, and the late Darrell Lepke, Jan and I started the Kansas Gelbvieh Association. We think it's important that the young people have a chance to explore the Gelbvieh breed and a lot of the contests that are offered. One of the positive changes that I have seen in the Gelbvieh breed since I started was the fact that the Gelbvieh cattle had a stigma that they had heavy birth weights, they had calving ease problems, they had udder problems. So I have seen a great improvement in both of those. One of the concerns I have for the future that we've found with our swine herd is feet is extremely important. And I think we need to pay attention to feet because that's pretty highly heritable. And we have found that we got to have a body put together, the bones in the right place, so we got some longevity in those cattle, and their feet has got to be right so they can travel. There's a bright future for the Gelbvieh cattle as long as we stay on the cutting edge of the industry and not be afraid to endorse the technology coming down the pipe. Gelbvieh Association has been an important part of our life for the last 40 years. We've met some really progressive people in agriculture and the cattle business. A lot of them have been on the cutting edge, and they've enabled us to learn about things that we need to incorporate in our operation. And so I just want to say thank you to everybody that shared with us.
Congratulations to this year's AGA Hall of Fame inductees, Leon and Jan Dunn. We are so grateful for their dedication and contribution to the Gelbvieh breed.